Welcome to Dayton Warcry Club. I'm Warren, and today I'm joined by my co-host and inaugural Gen Con Warcry winner, Fred Shred. We both went to Gen Con, and we're here to talk about our experiences at what will go down as the last big Warcry tournament for this era of the game. So, how's it going?
Hey, so far so good. Had a good time at Gen Con. Looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, it's been a heck of a few weeks because last time we recorded, we had just seen what was in the box for the new Warcry, but we hadn't seen a whole lot of the rules. And then since then, we got all the rules. We know all of the rule changes, the reactions, and everything in the compendium, like 10 PDFs worth. And so It was overwhelming to keep track of.
Tremendous amount of changes. Really more than I thought that we were going to get.
Yeah. And so we're like, I spent time at work, like trying to process that and think of new lists. And then like, oh shoot, there's also Gen Con prep. So yeah, it was, tough getting ready for everything. It was kind of overwhelming, but we went to Gen Con. We came prepared and you came away with the gold, and we're going to talk about it.
All right. Well, do we want to start? I see here. Let's kind of just go through this list in order then.
Yep. Yeah, we'll talk about the meta breakdown, who was there. We have the top lists. I have the top 4 lists, plus a few other interesting ones that I played against. And then we'll go just round by round for the missions, and then some final thoughts.
All right. Sounds good. So I don't have the meta breakdown in front of me. Let's take a look at what you have here. Yeah, it was a incredibly diverse meta. Very 16, cool stuff.
16 players, a lot of skilled players there. I would say, one spider player yourself, but 2 Skaven, 2 Ogre Maw tribes, Gitz, IDK, and definitely the top end of the meta was represented.
Absolutely, and the Caradon Overlords list was piloted. I didn't get anybody's name, so I apologize, but was piloted by the inventor of the Thundercats list.
Yep, I got all the details. I'm an ace reporter.
So Caradon was not a typical list. It was another kind of metagame attacking list by a very skilled player and list builder with a proven track record. So yeah, everybody everyone I played against played very well. Everybody's army looked awesome. It was a really cool event.
Okay, so we'll just get into the list here. So talk about your list.
Hey, that's me. So going into the event, I don't think it's surprising to anybody who follows competitive Warcry or theory crafting that we found Tarantulos to be far and away the best warband in the game, and we, going into the event, we sort of did some testing. We couldn't test against like every warband and every scenario, but we had a good feel for what we thought the scenarios would look like, and we tested spiders in kind of as many worst case scenarios as we could think of, and spiders kind of won handily every time. So going into the event, I was pretty confident that this was the best list. It is, as you can see here, it capped on models before it capped on points. I think that it is better to play, or was better to play, the maximum number of spiders rather than trying to get closer to 1,000 points by bringing in like another Doomweaver. The netters aren't great. They have the net, and then like they're okay. The Broodmasters are very, very good. And then the Spider Swarms obviously are the backbone of the list. The theory behind the list was going to be just crushing your opponent with activations, being really aggressive with the spiders, because you basically want to bring back 1 spider every single round with the triple, and play the positioning game. Like basically, like you can send the spiders all the way across the board and have your Broodmasters hang back on a different objective, and as the spiders die, you can resurrect them like 20 inches away. So not only is the army very mobile and very, very powerful in terms of damage output, but it can also be tricksy. You can really use that triple to make spiders pop up, wherever you want them to on the board. So I wasn't sure if we'd see a bunch of other spiders. We didn't. But just in case we did, I thought that like the solution to beating the spiders mirror was just having more spiders. And they're also just happen to be good against everybody else. So yeah, not a whole lot to it. I think the list is very good, and it felt good in all scenarios against all the warbands I played. I wouldn't change a thing about it.
Yeah, we talked about it on our tier list episode. Like, it was oppressive to the point of like just unfun, uninteractive games. You had some interaction that we'll talk about though, but
also had some very uninteractive games, just like you would think reading it off the page. So yeah, the only list that I ever felt like I might be in danger of dropping a match to was the second place list that I played in the finals.
It's specifically on that mission too.
Yeah, it was a apocalyptic scenario. Still came out ahead, and we'll get to that, but that was a tricky one. But everything else, just the sheer advantage of the list, just carried. Spiders do an outrageous amount of damage. Broodmasters do an outrageous amount of damage. Broodmasters can resurrect on a triple, and they just so happen to be resurrecting the best unit in the game. Whether it's trying to get opposing models dead or contest objectives, it just is good at everything. It's just a great all-around list.
Yeah, and for the last hurrah, I mean, this is the last chance that anyone's going to have to play it in its current form, as we know. And so, regardless, I think we were going to play it and just uncork the genie from the bottle, or someone was. If you weren't going to make it, I was going to borrow these models and play it. But I'm glad you did it though.
Yeah, really good list. And we'll talk about it maybe at some point, but I'm working on the new spiders list. So, this list was very good.
Yep. So Peter Mersinkavage sounds just like it's spelled on Gloomspite Gitz. Yeah, I played him round 1 as well. So he's a regular to the Northern Virginia area. He won a tournament there with this list as well. So four major threats. Snurk Sourtongue absolutely counts as a threat. At half the points. You just have to protect him a little bit.
Yep, and he's slow, but he has a 3-inch threat range, so that kind of helps make up for that.
That matters. Yep.
So I was his only loss in the finals, and it came down to the final activation in the final round. Obviously the list is very, very mobile. And this, of course, is playing with Sneaky Stab pre-nerf. So Sneaky Stab was insane. I know that, like, he got, 2 quads in your game?
Oh, yeah. We'll talk about it.
Yeah. And but the thing about the list is it can play without the quad. But, like, when it has access to a quad, those squig hoppers can get anywhere and attack any target when they have the quad, or they can play more strategically and just like pick and choose fights where they want. So yeah, just a very threatening list.
Yep. And good utility, 2 Nettas, the Brew Git. So you have tricks as well as the brute strength from the squig hopper boss and the bounder boss.
Yep. And a very nice looking army. Those are all converted squig hoppers that he added the faceplate armor to and stuff like that. So look very nice on the board.
Yep. Next up. So third place, Justin Smith, host of the Tabletop and Beyond podcast with Stormcast Eternal's Warrior Chamber.
Is probably the list that surprises people the most.
I agree. I've heard him talk about it on his podcast. I know some of the rationale behind it. If you tune into his podcast, we'll put a link in the description so you can find his monthly Warcry episode. He'll be talking about that. But he's a big fan of protectors with their 3-inch threat range. Even though they're only 3-inch move, he's a big fan of their double, which gives them a free move if there's someone wounded nearby. He recently added the prosecutor with celestial hammers as a mobile threat in his list. He's also used to using the Lord Relictor, who has a direct damage ability. And then I think he said that his weakest link was probably the Paladin with the Star Soul Mace. But
hits really hard though. That thing
yes.
is a monster in combat. I played this list as well. This is the list I beat in round 3. A much closer game than I think a lot of people would have thought looking at the 2 lists on paper and given the scenario.
Yeah, model counts.
Yeah, everything in there is very, very killy and surprisingly mobile. Like you said, the double plus a 3-inch range means you can kind of like move into position on the board and feel slightly safe. And then all of a sudden, those protectors are like right where they want to be and dealing out a lot of damage.
Yep, and the mission you played him on didn't, you just didn't have to kill any of his you wouldn't be killing any of his models, but if in a mission where you want to kill those guys, they're hard to kill too.
Yes. I killed the prosecutor. And then other than that, I didn't want to fight any of the other models.
Okay, and then last up, so did not make top 3. I played him round 4 though. But he was 3-1, also a very strong player, very strong list. Devin Benish with Idoneth Deepkin. So he had 2 Eels, 2 Namarti Thralls, and a couple of the Underworlds models, and an Isharin Soul Render. So actually has 2 nets in there.
Yep.
He has 2 nets in there, a surprising number of wounds because Furin has 16 wounds. Illithane and the Soul Render both have 20 plus, along with his Eels, 25 each. And those are
the Eels have that bubble they can pop that makes them very hard to kill for a round. Furin is I think Furin's a really good model. It was in 1.0, basically a foot eel. Good stuff.
Yeah. Point for clarification. So this is Devin's picture of his warband. They were the Ishlian Guard with the 1-inch range in the shields, not the 2-inch one. It's just
not the Morsar Guard.
Yes. For those at home, they had a very friendly proxy or third party model policy. But I played Devin. He was an outstanding player. Played the mission perfectly. Very tight player.
Good list. Interesting list. Not like the Thrall spam type list, but leaning on kind of the Eels and then some more mid-rangey kind of options.
Yeah, very solid units. And then just a few other lists. So I just talk about my list here. So I played Skaven. I only went 2-2. I felt like at least one of those games I probably could have won if the dice had gone a little bit differently, and the other one was kind of a nightmare scenario. But you've seen this list before if you're listening to us. Double Rat Ogre, 2 Pack Masters, Master Molder, and then fill it out with some Plague Monks and Giant Rats for extra activation.
Yep. A threatening list, very solid, pretty stock at this point. Capable of putting out a tremendous amount of burst damage between lead from behind and the Rat Ogres and the Master Molders. So
this is leaning far more heavily on Packmaster crack the whip. I don't think I ever used lead from behind. I might have been able to, but at this point the list is just hyper focused on just the Rat Ogre combo.
Absolutely.
There was 2 players playing Ogre Maw Tribes, just for sake of completeness when I talk about one of my matches. So I played Rafik from Swolehammer, another great channel. This was his list. So he went 3 range guys in his list as opposed to the typical double Thunderfist that you normally see.
Yeah, and a lot of times you'll see double Thunderfist, or you would see double Thunderfist, and then kind of like a slightly smaller melee piece like a Yeti or a Gorger, to give you some kind of melee muscle. But that's not the way they went here. The thing to keep in mind about this list, and this is what I really like about ogres in general, is 3 heavy hitting elite models and 9 total units. You just get to play so many bodies considering how big your top end guys are.
Yep. And so I definitely have to take that number, those smaller models into account when I talk about my game plan in this match. And then finally, the spice. Justin Norton was his name.
Yes.
So the father of Thundercats, and then also the father of volley gun spam.
This was a list I was very afraid to face. He told me later that he built this list specifically from the ground up to beat spiders, and I'm pretty confident it would have done that. This is pre-nerf volley guns. They get 6 attacks apiece. That's a lot of dice. And spiders, of course, with their super low toughness, like it doesn't take a whole lot of low strength shots to take them down. And then, of course, you can add like Fight for Profit on there.
Yep.
And they can attack at range as many times as a spider can attack in melee at that point. So yeah, this was a custom built list. He never ended up facing me, and I was only spiders player. But really interesting list, attacking the metagame from a very specific angle.
Yep. If you're not familiar, Enric Ironhail is an Underworlds guy with a volley gun as well. And then Bjorgen Thunderic, his closest profile is that of an Ether Chemist. So he actually hits kind of hard, and also he can give the rest of the team some protection. He can do a 6-inch bubble with -1 attacks.
Yeah, a really interesting choice. I was looking at volley guns a lot leading up to the event because they were kind of, I don't want to say overlooked in general when people talk about competitive lists.
But, no, we knew that they were good, but
yes,
the thing about Justin's list building is that he takes a theme and just goes, to an extreme. Like takes it to an extreme and does very well with it. Like no one thought that like 4 super elites would be competitive, but he made it work.
Yep.
Or, hey, what happens if you actually put 7 volley guns in a list?
Yep.
And see what happens.
I was taking around the list with like 2 volley guns. You know what I mean? Like, these seem good. I should play 1 or 2.
Right. To go with
these are really good. I should max out.
Right. Yeah, to go with like your mix of other flyers and a more balanced list.
So very cool list.
Okay, so let's get into the tournament. So first round, we played Sudden Death. And I'll let you talk about so first off, I was surprised to see this in the tournament packet, to be honest, because this mission gets a lot of flack, I think, in the community, because it can be over very, very quickly. The game very well could be over on round 1, as we'll see here. Yeah. If things don't go right.
What you're looking at in this picture is the end of round 1. I had just won the game. It was I started with 10 models on the field. To my opponent's many less than that. He was playing Untamed Beasts, and I want to say this up front. When I talk about a matchup being very, very easy, or a scenario being over before it started or anything like that, it has nothing to do with my opponent's play skill and very little to do with mine. I'm purely talking about just there are some points of this game where a certain type of list construction
certain missions or certain matchups, like warband numbers, that sort of thing.
Yes, are just mathematically insurmountable, and Sudden Death with spiders is one of those. I outnumbered him, not 2-1, but by a lot. And at the end of the first battle round, he would have had to kill like 4 or 5 spiders to even contest these objectives, and he could not do that. I didn't kill a single model. I literally just moved onto both objectives and just outnumbered him, and that's it. Yep. That it was over in minutes. I agree with you about maybe it's not the best competitive mission,
No, it's not.
And my opponent and I both like looked at it, and he said first, like, "Oh, I can't win." And I was like, well, yeah, I'm sorry. You know, it's just, that's just the way it is in this game. And this is one of those missions that going into it, I knew if I drew this mission that there's not many warbands in the game that can actually stop me from winning on round one. And that's exactly what happened. He moved forward aggressively to try to intercept the spiders, but they're so fast. And they have, at this point in the game, they had 8 wounds. So it's actually like hard for chaff units to one-shot them. And Untamed Beast doesn't have like rat ogres or something really over the top that can like smash their way through a horde of spiders. So we're talking like 3 attacks or so to kill a spider, and I just had too many. He just couldn't keep me off the objectives, and that was it. You can see from the picture, like, just ran onto both objectives and let him come to me and try to push me off, and couldn't make it happen.
Yeah, so I'll talk about my round one. I didn't diagram this one. I didn't get a lot of pictures because I was fighting from behind pretty much the entire time. So I was playing versus the Gloomspite Gitz player, and he gets a 666, and he rolls a 666 round one. So he gets quad 6 for sneaky stabbers, the juiced up rampage. So I know this is going to be bad, and he sends in the Bounder boss and assassinates a rat ogre for 30.
Oh yeah.
Boom. Yeah. So boom, half my threats are gone. And my game plan for this going in is if he doesn't roll hot like that, I feel like I can win because my game plan for these objective matchups is get onto the objectives, kill his smaller units, and then I have superior numbers, and I will win the objectives and win the game that way. Before protect my chaff units because I have 10 models to his 7. Use the rat ogres as muscle to efficiently clear chaff and win that way.
Yep,
so already I'm behind. I do send my second rat ogre in towards a deployment group that has 2 smaller goblins and Snurk. I crack whips, kill both the smaller goblins, and then round 2 he rolls another natural 666 and keeps initiative. So he had 3 singles to go along with it. So he gets another quad 6. Snurk assassinates the second rat ogre, and then from there on, I'm scrambling, trying to get in position to potentially win objectives. If he misplays or moves his squig hoppers too far away from objectives, I may be able to steal both objectives and steal the game, but he does not. And yes, I lose the game. So that's, again, strong list that takes the best advantage of hot die rolls. And there's nothing I could have done with that. I felt my game plan would have worked. If the dice had turned up differently, it could have been a very different game, very different tournament, I think.
Absolutely. I think you're probably right. But Sneaky Stab is that's a tough one, especially with the list that's so mobile.
Yep. So the next round, more standard mission here. So Fleeting Glory.
So when we have been playing Fleeting Glory locally, what generally happens is the red team grabs the red objective in the beginning of the game, the blue team grabs the blue objective, each player removes the other player's objective, and it turns into a big team fight in the middle.
Yep.
By the end of the game. And I think that's probably a fairly typical way that these break down.
Right, because when we play, the worst case scenario is all of your forces are on one side of the board, and the one objective that matters in round 3 is on the far side of the board, and you not only can you not take the objective, you can't effectively fight on the objective either.
And so the thing, so basically you're incentivized to not to put too much into your deployment area objective.
Right.
So what ended up happening in mine, I played against Sylvaneth. It was a beautifully painted army. I believe he won Best Painted.
He did. Yep. I did not get the name of the player, but yeah. So the Sylvaneth player who did win Best Painted. Like 8 out of 16 voted for that as the Best Painted Warband.
Yeah, beautiful Sylvaneth army. Kurnoth Hunter with a great sword, Kurnoth Hunter with a bow, some Spite Revenants and some Tree Revenants was basically the army. And his plan going into this was to take his first objective and then use the teleport ability of the Spite Revenants, I believe are the ones that can teleport.
Mm-hmm.
To kind of move around the board, because they have to teleport in a certain distance away from other models, but they can teleport right on top of like objectives and stuff. The problem is my army is very fast and very, very killy. So I managed to, you can see here, this is the end of the game. I managed to I did basically what I talked about in the beginning, where I committed a lot of spiders to the opposite side of the board and my Broodmasters to the other corner. And as he had to kill the spiders or they were going to push him off his objective.
And then you just summoned on the other side.
Yes. And so when I had my chance to remove an objective, I removed the center objective. Or I removed his objective. Yeah. We removed the objectives in order here as he was racing for the other side of the board. Took his objective. I took the middle objective. And then you can see in the middle, I have this sort of like picket line of spiders. And they just tied up everything trying to get over there in time. And so it was that idea of force my opponent to kill the spiders or lose the objective and then resummon them in the opposite corner of the board and just set up an insurmountable advantage for the final round. And if he had pulled that objective, I could have easily moved them, because they're so fast, moved them into the center to push him off of that objective as well. So I was just in a pretty insurmountable position by the end of like round 2. And again, my opponent played well. He had a good strategy, a coherent strategy, and it was a good strategy for the models that he had and the scenario he had. The list just I out-activated him 2-1 and I resurrected a spider every round the entire game. So, I basically had 19 models. But I did think my strategy was good, which was just sort of string along his slower moving army, and then just basically teleport my spiders across the board and like come get me, and he just couldn't push me off of it.
Yep. So I wound up choosing maybe incorrectly on mine. I wound up having to get across the board too, but it didn't punish me too much. So here again, I used the same game plan. So I want to try to kill his Noblars. I can leave the ogres on the table and then just use my strength of numbers on the objectives to win the objectives. If you start out with an early lead, and you can very easily protect that lead into the final turns of the game. And so here you can see my nice little deployment card here. So actually what I did was, so I have a deployment group here with a Rat Ogre, and his Thunder Fist was here in this corner. And so what I did was I just ran my Rat Ogre directly into his Thunder Fist. Now, Thunder Fist has 40 hit points, and I wasn't planning on killing the Thunder Fist. I ran it in there, and it killed the 2 Noblars next to the Thunder Fist. And Thunder Fist is far more dangerous when he's shooting than in melee. In melee, he only has 4 strength 4 attacks with a 2/4 damage profile.
It's good for a range unit, but it's not.
It's okay. It's okay, yeah. But I felt like my Rat Ogre could last a couple turns against it, which he did. And then the Lead Belchers have an even weaker profile, where you can tie up. I can send a Chaff model into a Lead Belcher, and the Lead Belcher usually has to use 2 attacks in order to kill a Chaff model, and so that's again just denying them efficient use of their chaff clearing abilities. So that was my plan here. So I ran in into this corner, tied them up. Had the extra bodies on the table. I wound up actually burning this objective first turn because I won the die roll, which is actually not what I want to do. Rafik burn the center objective. So this wound up being the one that counted. But again, having the speed to get across the table and the early lead meant that I had it mathematically won by the end of the third round.
Yeah, and that's the strategy if you're the faster warband in this game. I think is exactly it's very similar to how I played it, and we ended up attacking this in a similar way.
It's the combination of speed and numbers, and
Yes.
when we get into a deep dive analysis next episode of like what happened to some of these warbands, the speed, you can't have speed and numbers, you can't have both in 2.0. But I took advantage of that in this matchup, and I didn't take a picture of the end of the game, but at the end of the game, his Thunderfist was still in the corner. He killed the rat over, but he had no other effect on the game.
Yep, and he's slow. He can't get across the board. Like that's what you do. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I felt like
see where the two Kurnoth hunters were in my game. They were both in that abandoned quadrant, just killing spiders. So I think that's how you attack this matchup when you have the numerical advantage. You just feed however many guys it takes, and then you just march across the board.
Okay, so next round we played Scour.
Scour. So this is the round. At this point I forgot to take pictures because I was kind of dialed in. I was 2-0 and was looking to try to win the event.
Yeah,
but I played against the Stormcast. Justin, and so I forget if I was red or blue. It's symmetrical deployment. Doesn't really matter. The purpose of this game or the scenario is to either kill your opponent's pieces or get your pieces to the opposite long table edge. I was outnumbered him by 10 models. So obviously the warband with more models is incentivized to run for the edge, and the warband with less models is incentivized to try to intercept them and kill them. This ended up being a lot closer than I think people would assume looking at the list, with my fast numerical advantage warband versus his slow small numbers. But the Stormcast were very, very good at killing spiders, and he played well and put them in position with their threat range to one-shot kill a lot of spiders. So that's basically was his strategy, where after the match we talked about it and we agreed that we think both of us thought that the error that he made early in the game, and I thought this was interesting, is you can see where like the Skaven head is in the center of the map there, 6 inches from the center. Right there. That's where his spears were, his two protectors. And my spiders just moved straight forward, and he moved up to meet them near the center of the board. And at that point, I broke around them because of their 3-inch move and got behind them and to the table edge. And it didn't matter they had 3-inch deployment, because as soon as you hit the table edge, you escape.
Yep.
So he's immediately after the match, he's like, I should have moved the spears back closer to the table edge and further apart and created more of a wider bubble there of 3-inch threat range on each one and not let you get behind me. And I think that's it, because it's kind of counterintuitive. He wanted to kill spiders, so he moved forward to kill the spiders. But once he did that, he opened up a lot of area behind him, and I could just end around them. Now, the deployment group on the left there managed to come in and kill quite a few spiders. They deployed, and my dagger deployment in the upper corner was coming down that table edge, and they managed to, with their threat radius, get in there and kill quite a few spiders. And that's what kept the game close, was that confrontation there. But I had already gotten such a lead in the center of the map that even though he was killing spiders, and the matchup ended up looking pretty close, there was never a point where I trailed. You know what I mean? He kept it very, very close, but the damage was done in the center of the map. Even though that, I was surprised by how quickly those fighters got into the mix and tied up my spiders and how fast they killed them along the table edge. But
they hit hard. 3-5, a hit and a crit. Hitting a crit's enough to kill a spider easily.
Absolutely. So it was really interesting the way it played out, and I think he played it really well. And immediately after he moved the spears up, he's like, "That was probably the mistake." And
Yeah.
I think that's interesting because he could have created more of a wall
Yeah.
with those guys, and that
Well,
I think.
Yeah, it just goes to show for a simple game, it's a game of movement and positioning, not just raw combat power. The movement and
Yes,
positioning is arguably just as important as, just the numbers that we analyze on stats.
absolutely. And on the right table edge, that's where his prosecutor was. I threw away a couple of spiders killing it. I didn't want it to be able to just fly across the board and pick off stragglers. So I just surrounded it and killed it. I don't know if that was the right call. It's possible I should have just disengaged from it and ran for the edge. But
20 hit points. I mean, if you're going to kill one thing, that's the one you go for.
That's what I thought. And it didn't end up costing me, but that was sort of my major decision point in the game was, do I surround this thing and kill it so it doesn't fly free and go get to pick one-on-one fights with spiders, or do I just break for the table edge? I chose to kill it, and it worked out okay.
Yeah, so I played the other Justin, Orton, and so I'm looking at his list, and I'm seeing, okay, he has a lot of efficient chaff killers with the volley guns, right? And so I'm thinking, okay, this is pretty bad. However, I do, the way that the deployment shook out, and the way that the matchup of the models shook out, so I realized that even though his volley guns are incredibly efficient at murdering rats, if I tie up a rat ogre in combat with them, the rat ogres which will deal with the volley guns in very short order. So
Yes.
my game plan is just rampage with rat ogres and try to use, fortunately we had some okay line of sight blocking terrain here. My escape route, I'm moving up the path here, so I'm trying to escape up this way using this bluff to try to give myself some cover, because his initial deployment is here on the left side. On the right side, and I felt bad for doing this, but Justin said he's done the same thing playing Thundercats. So I run a rat ogre right up on the deployment point, and so when his models move in on round 2, they're pretty much immediately in combat with the rat ogre.
Yep, that's what the prosecutor did against me. He did the same thing, bottle up the deployment group. It's an effective strategy.
Yeah, and so that rat ogre got a lot of kills. My rat ogre coming in round 2, I had rolled a triple that I turned into a rampage, and so I ping ponged the rat ogre, got a couple kills with him as well. So I got pretty far ahead. He was able to kill a fair number of my chaff with shots he was able to make, but at the end I won 9-7.
Yeah, absolutely. And
so this brings us to round 4, and I'll start on this one here. So this was Bloodmarked. We talked about this with Jolly a couple episodes ago, and he made some modifications to it. So it's not an instant sudden death with just one fighter being marked. Now it's this double blood mark thing. This was a twist that we didn't see coming. He made this change after he was on the podcast. And so I was matched up versus Devin, the Idoneth Deepkin player, and things were bad for me from the very start.
Yeah, so this picture really tells the whole story, doesn't it?
Yes. So his list was very solid regardless. The fact he had 2 flyers, the fact that the terrain was set up where 2 very small bluffs, which were essentially inaccessible to for anyone to get up there, meant that he could just sit up there, and they were pretty much inaccessible the entire game. He wouldn't have to commit them until he absolutely had to. So this was very uninteractive. I'll freely admit that it was very frustrating on my part. But I mean, it was all by the rules of the game. He's a very solid, tight player in every aspect of the game. and yeah, he used it to his advantage, and I can't be mad about that. So I play through we play through the first few turns. I pick my rat ogres to be bloodmarked. In retrospect, maybe I pick one rat ogre, one master molder, so I'm not sacrificing a bloodmarked fighter, since I have to engage my rat ogres. I go engage his pack, and even the rest of the 5 guys he has on the ground do a pretty good job of hitting hard, taking out one of the rat ogres. He doesn't fully commit his flyers, but after killing one rat ogre, if you check out the rules, we realize that going into after round 3, his 1 victory point for killing 1 unit, and even when time is called, he will win based on that. He can just play keep away at that point, and we had 2 unscathed eels of 25 hit points, the ability to ignore crits on them, and so this was the point where I conceded. I did want to catch the last of your match, but it looks like but you had just wrapped up yours as well, and I got the story for your match. So tell me how yours went.
So again, I was at this point, I was a match away from winning the tournament, which was my goal from the very beginning of the tournament. Sometimes you go to a tournament and you're just like, hey, I'm just here to compete with my list that I kind of brewed up and see how it does and hang out. At this tournament, I really felt like I had a pretty good shot of winning it, and so I didn't take any pictures, is I guess what I'm saying. But
no, game face, yep.
I was up against the Gloomspite Gitz list that we've already talked about, that you had already faced in the tournament, and with the volley gun player being eliminated from contention at this point, this was my list I at least wanted to face. But I knew I was going to, because the person who was 3rd place was someone I had just beaten in the previous round. So I knew, mathematically, pairings-wise, that I would be facing this Gloomspite Gitz list. And so I look over the materials that have been handed out. And it's bloodmarked.
And so we kind of talked about this exact scenario.
Yes.
In terms of what we figured, the Spiders list was so strong that the only way to not win the tournament was to lose under a very specific set of circumstances, either a mission and a matchup. And this was one of the nightmare matchups that we thought could happen. This exact mission of Bloodmarked with a Gloomspite Gitz list. Because we knew that the Gloomspite Gitz was a known quantity based on Riley's performance at Adepticon.
Yes. And just mathing it out and looking at lists, you could kind of tell that squig hoppers were definitely a pretty viable strategy. So not only am I facing one of the 2 lists, the other one being the volley guns, that I identified right away that I was nervous about, but it's in Bloodmarked, which we had talked about as potentially the worst case scenario. And the Winds of Fate twist meant that he was rolling 7 dice every round to try to fish for those quads. Yes. So it's a perfect storm, because I can't bloodmark a spider. They have 1 toughness and 8 wounds. So my most wounds that I have are on my Broodmasters, who have 18 wounds, 4 toughness, 18 wounds. A sneaky stabbed up squig hopper boss can very easily one-shot an 18 wound model.
They were. We talked about round 1, he was able to one-shot 30 wound rat ogres.
Yes. So I knew from the very beginning that if I ever exposed a Broodmaster, there's nowhere on the battlefield I could hide from his 10-inch move flyers. So I would have to use deployment to kind of hide them. And we had talked about this when we were testing for the event, and also immediately before the round, I backed my 2 Broodmasters up to the edge of the board, and they each were surrounded by a semicircle of spiders, an inch away. no room for them to jump down between the bases, and no, if they brought into base contact, they'd be out of range of the Broodmaster. So the two daggers, as you can see from the deployment there on the left, I rushed in a netter and a 4 spiders to his dagger, which had his Bloodmarked were his Bounder and his Squidhopper boss. So immediately engaged with the spiders, using the netter for the first time in the tournament to pin down the Squidhopper boss and not let it jump away. Put 10 damage on it of 16 wounds. So
the picks sort of helped you as well then.
Yeah.
Because his guys are not super incredibly tanky either.
Right. That's absolutely right. So I figured my best bet was to do as much damage as I could with my non-Broodmaster deployment group, and then try to just kind of out-activate him. So my Broodmasters, I had between the Broodmasters and their spider bodyguards, I had between 10 and say 14 activations to use. And in the first round, he rolled a quad, and I managed to wait him out with those that I had no intention of moving until he had to activate the Squighoppers.
Yeah. So leaning on that activation advantage, because
who could not reach the Broodmaster. So the best they could do was just really overstab a spider. So I got him to burn a quad that way, and I felt good about that strategy. But Snark and the Squighoppers could kill a lot of spiders. So Snark's deployment group moved up to the center, and he kind of mopped up the remains of that deployment group before I had managed to kill either one of his Bloodmarked guys. So I'm playing very evasive. I'm resurrecting my spiders as they die, and sort of stockpiling like a shield around each Broodmaster. I have 10 wounds on one of his guys. Problem is, according to the rules, at the end of the third battle round, you can't end within 4 inches of the table edge. So I no longer have, at the end of the round 3, that's kind of where we're at. It's stalemated. I'm refusing to move. Mm-hmm. I'm making him burn his dice without being able to get to the Broodmasters. He has his 2 Bloodmarked guys up on top of terrain where I cannot reach them, just sort of waiting for me to make a move. So at the end of round 3, I have to move my Broodmasters up, and then there's a flank where they can be attacked. Right? I can't perfectly surround them anymore. So in round 3, he ends up running up his Boingrot guy, pops a boing boing boing, which is the one that lets him, like, it's basically like the charge ability where it deals value of the dice to whoever you move into base contact with. Dealt a bunch of damage to a spider, killed that spider, killed another spider, just trying to carve away to the Broodmaster at this point. He gets one shot by a swarm of spiders. I think he may have I think his plan was to do that and then disengage and move away next round. Mm-hmm. And try to do like a hit and run type thing. Come in, kill 2 spiders, run away. But 3 spiders were more than enough to kill him in one battle round.
Move, attack, 3 times.
Yep. And then res a spider into combat and attack twice. So I've killed one of his Bloodmarked guys at this point. I've mopped up most of the foot troops, the small guys, the netters and stuff. So I figured netting would be a real big thing in this group because we each had 2 netters. And so we both like assassinated each other's netters really early on.
Yep. When I played this mission against Jolly with just the single Bloodmarked, he had a netter, and the netter was a big part of the game that we played.
Mm-hmm. So we both, I think, correctly identified that was a priority, that our netters were A, squishy and relatively slow, and B, really important. So we really pushed in the early rounds to chase down and kill each other's netters. So at this point, one of his Bloodmarked guys are down. He's down to Squighopper boss, a Squig Hopper, Snurk, and the Brugit, which is still a ton of damage. That is a very scary deployment.
Yeah, almost any of them could end the game.
Yes. So now I have to move my Broodmasters up. One of them gets immediately assassinated with a sneaky stab, just like we knew it was going to happen. He had to move out of the 4 inches of the thing as soon as he exposed himself. I couldn't protect him forever.
You didn't have enough activations left to really wait out.
Exactly.
At that point, attrition does sometimes set in.
Yes. So where it really came down to it, we're in the 4th battle round, maybe the 5th, and we're both down to just a handful of models. And the only model that has a chance of catching my Broodmaster is his Loon, his Squig Hopper boss, which is his other Bloodmarked. So it's like 1v1. Like, he decides before he does that, he's going to mop up as many spiders as he can. So he jumps in and starts slaughtering the last remaining couple of spiders that I have, with the goal of isolating the Broodmaster so he doesn't have like that. I can't counter swarm him like I did with his Bounder. So now I have 1 spider left in base contact with his Boing Rod Bounder boss. And my Broodmaster is running for his life, and he is not in range of Snurk, but Snurk, if he got a quad, could double move, burn his quad for sneaky stab to get his bonus attack action, and easily one-shot my Broodmaster if he gets initiative and a quad. So he rolls a quad and 3 singles. He rolls a triple and 4 singles. He has to make the quad. I roll a triple and 4 singles. I choose to make a quad rather than guaranteeing initiative, with the goal being, my understanding being, that he pretty much has to make the quad if he wants to push for the win right here. And he does. He makes a quad also. So we each have a quad, minus a quad 6. I forget what his was. Enough. It was quad 4 or more. Enough to completely one-shot if he got to move. So I have 2 choices here. I can either run the Broodmaster away from Snurk and hide, and then be at the mercy of the Boing Rod Bounder in later rounds, because I'm not going to be able to close with he's going to get to decide the terms of engagement there because of the 10-inch fly. Or I can do something I've never done before, which is use the spider quad, which is Gift of the Eightfold Watcher.
And I got it right here on the screen.
There it is. I have literally never used this ability before. It is only usable by the spider swarms. If the spider swarm, using Gift of the Eightfold Watcher, and as my quad is a 6, I would have 6 dice to roll. If any of them roll a 6, he cannot disengage.
Right. So it's right. So at a minimum, it's a net, and you can expect that to happen.
Yes. If I roll 3 or more 6s and I have 6 dice to do it, it would kill the Bounder boss. Double spider attack, triple spider attack into 10 more damage. He had like 7 hit points left. So just the 10 would kill him. So I'm thinking about this long and hard, because I could play not to lose by running the Broodmaster away, because I know if he acts, he has 2 different models that could potentially come in. I decide to go for the kill, for the win. And I pop Gift of the Eightfold Watcher, attack twice. He's down to just a hit point or 2. I pop Gift of the Eightfold Watcher, make the bonus attack, whiff on it, and then roll 3 6s on the bonus roll and deal 10 points of damage and just end the game on the spot. It was amazing. And it was really, really close. Because if Snurk got to go, I was between a rock and a hard place there, because that was the only option I had, because if his Boing Rod Bounder survived, he could chase down the Broodmaster.
Yes.
If Snurk got to go before the Broodmaster got to go, he would kill him. So I was he could
easily sneaky stab into him. And I think you actually looked at it and Yeah, if he had happened, he would have won the game. It could
He
have
rolled.
gone either way.
He went ahead and rolled the attack just to see what happened. He dealt like 30 damage.
Yeah.
It was outrageous. So it was an amazing, like really tense end to a really good match, and a really good tournament.
I wish I could have covered it. You know how we do our coverage with all capturing all the movements and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's like the high level play that I like to really kind of record on this.
Absolutely. And there was a lot of weight actions being used strategically, and a lot of deployment and movement and positioning that he did to set himself up. I think really the only time that he was surprised or something went the way that he wasn't, like not according to his plan, because he's very methodical player with a good strategy, was how quickly the spiders could kill one of his squig hoppers when he left it in range, which I had happen a couple of times in the tournament. If you don't play against spiders, you have no idea how much damage first edition spiders can do. But he recovered from that pretty quickly and didn't make that mistake again. The rest of it was dancing around, isolating individual spiders, killing them, getting back up high. And it just so happened that with that quad 6, one spider was able to finish the game off.
But yeah, at the end of it all, it came down to the initiative roll on the final turn of the game. And then also, I think I might have missed it in there. And then I think you guys had to have a priority roll off in there as well.
No, not in the final round. It could have gone that way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're jockeying with the wild dice that could have forced a priority.
His option would have been don't make the triple or the quad and challenge and then go for a roll off for initiative, but he only had a 50% chance of winning that, and then he wouldn't have
the quad anyway, right?
The quad anyway. So he also decided to play to win, not to not lose. Basically, if he had done that, we both would have punted the round to the next round, because neither of us would have been able to kill the other person's any significant models. And we both decided, hey, the dice are here. I have the 666. He had the 444 or 5. Like, this is the time to make that big game swingy quad and see what we can do with it. We both went for that strategy, and it was.
But that's the sort of moment that makes you fall in love with the game. That was like the third game that we played on the night that we started playing Warcry. Right, we had 2 uninteractive games, and then we had a third interactive game that came down to the initiative roll in the final turn.
Yes.
Right, and that was like, bam! All right, yep, I get what this game is all about. We're freaking hooked.
And when you see good players play, and you know enough to follow along, the level of strategy with positioning and activation advantage, with waiting, whether to wait or not to wait, whether to push ahead, or who's to quote a magic term, who's the beatdown? Is it in this mission, does it favor me from the beginning, or do I have to play defensively?
That was my observation watching Darcy, Bono, and I think it was Kyle at playing out the final match on table 1 of Adepticon. The Saturday tournament at Adepticon, where it was this play and this counter play, and very tight, methodical play, killing, running away, chasing down and hunting down wounded units and stuff like that, and just the game swinging back and forth because hey, we got a rampage. All right, now the momentum is with Darcy. Now, hey, now this happened. Okay, the game swings back to Kyle and back and forth.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it can be really easy to look at it and say, man, if I would have won that game if he hadn't rolled that quad. But so much of that is either building up, where the one player is like, I'm going to set myself up where if I hit a quad in the next 2 rounds, I'll be able to win, or saying to yourself, hey, I'm going to play around, like I'm going to play to the best of my ability to neutralize the effect of these swingy abilities, can make a really big difference. It really can. Like I said, in the first round or the first battle round of the last game, he had a quad, and he was unable to convert it to anything meaningful, because I wasn't going to let him. Like, that was my number one goal, is I'm going to play to neutralize these quads. He can kill a spider with a quad, I don't care, but he's never going to have an unprotected high value target in a round where he rolls a triple or a quad. And I mean, I could have lost a Broodmaster in the first round very easily if I had left it open to, jump right on and pop that first round quad.
Right. That bubble wrap strategy that we discussed.
Yep. So stuff like that. It's really interesting, and having round 3 come down so much to, hey, where do I put? I have one. My opponent's saying basically, I have one movement round to set up to do as much damage control as I can in round 2, and he could either move forward or backwards, and he chose forward, and immediately the whole game just switched. So pay attention to your positioning, I guess, is what I'm saying. Before you blame dice, check your positioning and check having a game plan, having a strategy.
Yep. Yeah. Like I talked about my game plans. For three of the 4 rounds, I had a game plan, and if the game plan had gone to plan, I think I win those 3. I think I win those 3 rounds, or at least my game versus Gloomspite Gitz is very different if the dice come up differently, potentially. But you don't know.
But it was an awesome tournament. All my opponents were great, and Jelly did a great job of putting it together and running it. Getting prize support.
Oh yeah, he was hustling for prize support from vendors. Yeah, great job there. Any other final thoughts? I think we waxed poetic about the great all the great players that we played against the tournament. It was really cool putting names to faces, meeting folks like the Tabletop and Beyond podcast, the Swolehammer folks.
And that was very cool. Everyone's armies, and I said this before, but like sometimes I would go to larger events for Warhammer 40K back in the day. And
just great plastic.
The armies, a lot of people's armies would be half, painted and stuff, and everybody's armies were painted to a really good everything looked great, which was really cool. And I think that it was a fitting capstone to 1.0. Really diverse metagame. Spiders just were completely ridiculous, and really showed that off in a couple of different ways, with both their speed and their damage and their number advantage. All those things came up throughout the tournament, like as being like just a major like factor in a game. Like, oh, this game I'm going to be favored because my army's much faster. This game I'm going to be favored because I can just do so much damage. This game I'm going to be favored because I can just out-activate my opponent. And the fact that it could do all 3 of those things was absolutely absurd. So.
But at the end, you have to dig. But in the end, you had to dig deep into a bag of tricks.
This is true, and also they're tricksy. So a lot of factions don't have a usable faction quad or really, really, really good triples. Spiders has both, or had, So I enjoyed playing with it because it just felt really good and really flexible. I have a list to test out for 2.0 that's not going to be as good, but it plays even more spiders.
Yeah. Next episode, I'm thinking we're probably going to do something along the lines of just impressions. We could probably go for like 2 hours if we get the whole gang together to talk about all the changes and lists and stuff like that. And so we're going to have to be very judicious with how much we talk about and how many lists we drop.
I have
we drop on people
that I think are like in a place where I wouldn't be embarrassed to share them. And then a bunch of other half-formed concepts. So.
But a whole lot of lists to talk about. But before we talk about lists on our next episode, let's talk about actually just getting play in on version 2.0. So here we have upcoming events. So we already locking it in. I'm talking with some folks. We have at least 2 or 3 Warcry players that are going to be meeting at Epic Loot at the end of this month. Sunday, August 28th. The store opens up at noon. Table fees, you can pay the table fee, which turns into store credit, or I will pay the table fee for you, and I'll just collect all the store credit. So, just kind of show up and play.
And what we do with these things is just get a lot of Warcry in. If you just want
Yes.
to play some games and you live in the southwestern Ohio area, it's worth it because we will have people just pair off and switch between rounds. We have all kinds of terrain.
Yep.
Literally dozens of different warbands,
Yeah,
and we just get
Zach's there, I believe we should have 6 complete boards ready to go. At least 6. I could probably piece together one more with what I have.
So, and it's not like you're going to come by and maybe get a game in. It's like you can probably get 4 games in if you come at noon and you want to play Warcry. So
I think I got 3 in the last time we met up.
Yeah,
and it's a great store to do this because if you like, so they have a good selection of used miniatures. So you can take your table fees that get turned into store credit and buy used minis. My golf score gets hammered every time I go to Epic because I find something like, oh hey, yep. If I'm getting new one sprue minis for 50% of GW price, I can't turn that down.
No. Yeah, there's always something there. I find something there every time in the used section. So
come on out for that.
Absolutely. Highly recommended. And then we have some organized events coming up.
Yep. So we got the Nova Open still going on. Still slots open for the narrative event and the Warcry GT. So this will be put on by Justin Smith from the Tabletop and Beyond podcast.
Great guy. Met him, played him.
Yep. And so my schedule, I have a work thing that's coming up. I have a work thing that Wednesday. And so I am more than likely going to be driving up Wednesday night or Thursday. So I will not be able to participate in the GT. So if you see me there on Thursday, I will probably doing coverage. I got a hobby deal going on Friday. So, but with the slots open, I am going to switch to the Warcry narrative. So I'm working at trying to get something I'm trying to get something at 1,000 points with what I have. It's harder than you think for Skaven. But I think I got something that
I have a list I like a lot, but we can talk about that next time.
I have something that I think will be good for narrative. I don't think it's competitive, but for a narrative event, I'd be perfectly fine taking it out and having some fun in a narrative event.
Good stuff. It was a great event, and I look forward to playing in the next one. I'm looking forward to seeing how much of a difference reactions make. There are people out there that have played some games, and the whispers around that I've heard have been reactions are not fully understood yet, but very, very powerful.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things, and this is really what, when we play at the end of the month under 2.0, is actually getting to see the reactions in play. Because, up until now, we can do a whole lot of theory crafting over what's good, how to build a warband, the effect of certain rules changes and stuff like that. But for me, I need to see things in play and actually see how they play out on the table to really kind of understand it. Right? There's a difference between theory and practice.
Yes.
And you learn so much more by practice, not just math hammer.
Absolutely. So looking forward to that end of this month and some events coming up. Good stuff.
So this brings us to a close for this episode of Dayton Warcry Club. We'll be back next time with what will probably be a huge episode with all of our impressions on the new rules and the changes to the compendium. We already have a ton of lists that we want to try out, but the best place to see some of the latest lists we post and get help with your new list is on the official Warcry Discord, a great community with link in the description. Till next time, I'm War Machine.
I'm Fred Shred.
Thanks for listening. New motorcycle.
Yeah, I bought a motorcycle this week.
Oh my goodness.